Jimin suddenly destroys Jungkook's gift in the waiting room. What he says after shatters everyone's hearts. And Jungkook's silent reaction says it all. "This isn't what I asked for, Jungkook." The porcelain box shattered on the floor like a scream. Sharp, final, and impossible to take back. Every eye in the waiting room froze on the tiny explosion of glittering fragments. The air thickened instantly with disbelief, as if time itself had slammed on the brakes. Jimin stood over the broken remains, his chest rising and falling with shallow breaths. His fingers trembled slightly, betraying the control he tried to wield. Jungkook, on the other side of the room, looked like someone who had been punched in the stomach but hadn't found the breath to fall. His hands still hovered mid-air, where just a moment ago, he had extended the small, intricately wrapped box with a hopeful smile. Silence wasn't empty, it was electric. It buzzed in the fluorescent light above, hummed in the locked jaws of the staff nearby, and echoed in the corners of the room like an accusation. Jimin's voice, low and serrated, cut through the silence. "You always try to fix things with gifts. You think this makes up for everything?" Jungkook didn't answer. He didn't move. His gaze was locked on the fragments at Jimin's feet, shards of white ceramic, some pieces still dusted with gold paint, now ruined beyond repair. Only two people in the room knew what that gift really meant. Taehyung, one of the older staff members who had worked with them since debut, turned slightly, his throat tightening. He recognized the box. Jungkook had spent 3 weeks searching antique markets in Tokyo to find it. Not because it was rare, but because it matched the exact design of one that Jimin's grandmother had kept in her room. A memory Jimin once mentioned in passing, late at night, half asleep in the van between schedules. And now it was gone. Shattered, like glass memories dropped in the middle of unresolved grief. "You told me you were over it," Jimin whispered, but his voice wavered. "You told me we were done with this cycle." Jungkook's jaw clenched. "I never said I was over you." The air cracked again, softer than the box, but louder in meaning. A stylist who had just entered the room holding a tray of pressed shirts turned right back around and left without a word. Another assistant, young and new, looked at Taehyung for guidance but found none. No one moved. No one dared to interrupt what was unfolding. Jimin's face twisted with something far more complex than anger. Guilt, sadness, betrayal, maybe all of them at once. His hands dropped to his sides, but his fists remained clenched. "Stop doing this," he said, but his tone lacked its earlier certainty. "You can't keep acting like we're still in that space where apologies mean something." Jungkook stepped forward. Just one step. It was enough to draw Jimin's entire focus, like the rest of the room, had fallen away. "I didn't come here to apologize," he said slowly. "I came to show you that I still remember, that I still care, even when you pretend not to." Jimin blinked once, twice. His lip twitched like he wanted to respond, but he didn't. Instead, he looked down at the broken gift again. A staff member tried to approach with a broom, but Jimin lifted his hand. "Don't." The fragments glinted on the floor under the harsh light, like pieces of a heart someone had tried too late to protect. Jungkook's voice dropped to a whisper. "I know you're hurting, Jimin. I'm not asking you to forget. I'm asking you to see me." Jimin looked at him, finally, truly looked at him. Not with anger, not with dismissal, but with the naked exhaustion of someone who'd held on to too much pain for too long. "Why now?" Jimin asked, quieter than before. Jungkook took another step. "Because I saw you yesterday, sitting by yourself after rehearsals. You looked like you couldn't breathe. And I remembered how you used to tell me you hated being alone in silence." Jimin let out a bitter laugh. "So, what? You thought a ceramic box would fix that?" "No," Jungkook said gently, "but I thought remembering mattered." Jimin looked away, his throat bobbed with the effort of holding something back. Behind him, the mirror reflected a version of himself that didn't look like the confident, polished idol. It showed someone smaller, frayed around the edges, barely holding it together. The room didn't breathe until Jimin spoke again. "It was from Tokyo?" Jungkook nodded. 3 weeks. I called 5 collectors. Flew twice." The silence returned, but now it pulsed differently. Not tense, but heavy, like a dam that might finally crack. Taehyung walked over and quietly knelt by the shattered porcelain, carefully picking up a piece with tissue between his fingers. He held it like a relic. "I can try to glue it," he whispered to no one in particular. Jimin didn't respond. He turned away, walking toward the mirror, placing both palms on the counter beneath it. His back trembled with a deep breath. Jungkook stood still, arms by his sides now, no longer reaching for anything, just waiting. And then, finally, Jimin looked up at Jungkook's reflection in the mirror. "You should have come sooner." Jungkook closed his eyes. No one cried out loud. But when the staff finally moved again, one of the youngest assistants wiped her eyes quickly with her sleeve, pretending to be brushing lint from her shirt. The box was broken. The words were raw. But somewhere in the ruins, something fragile and necessary had been said at last. And maybe that was what hurt the most. "You should have come sooner." The mirror still held the weight of Jimin's confession, hanging like an invisible fracture across the air. Jungkook didn't answer. He couldn't. He was caught between the pull of the present moment and the unraveling history threaded in every glance, every breath Jimin had just taken. The staff began to clear the room with quiet, deliberate movements. No words, no eye contact. Only the soft clinking of broken porcelain being swept into a padded tray, like evidence from a crime scene. As the door clicked shut behind the last staff member, silence returned, but this time, it was thick with something else. Jimin didn't turn around. His palms were still pressed on the cold vanity table. His head hung slightly forward, bangs veiling his eyes. "I didn't want to see you," he said, voice low and husky like gravel over regret. "I didn't want to face the person who made me believe everything could be fixed, when he was the one breaking it all." Jungkook stepped forward carefully. "Jimin, you never what?" Jimin turned sharply, eyes red but dry, fury barely contained. "You never lied? Never walked out when things got hard? Never disappeared for weeks and pretended like your silence wasn't screaming in my ears every night?" Jungkook swallowed hard. "I disappeared because I didn't know how to fix us." Jimin scoffed. "You didn't need to fix us. You just needed to stay." The words hit like a slap. Jungkook flinched but didn't retreat. Instead, he exhaled slowly and took a final step closer, close enough that only a breath of space separated them now. "I was scared," Jungkook said, "of what I was becoming, of how much I needed you, of the fact that needing you made me feel weak." Jimin's laugh was bitter and hollow. "You think you're the only one who was scared? I begged you to talk to me. I begged you, Jungkook, and you said nothing." "I was drowning," Jungkook whispered, voice cracking, "and I didn't want to pull you under with me." "You did anyway," Jimin shot back. "You pulled me under with your silence." Jungkook didn't speak for a long moment. His eyes drifted to the small pile of porcelain fragments on the counter. Even now, even shattered, the gift still held shape, like their past broken but not erased. "I thought if I gave you that box," Jungkook began, his voice strained, "it would show you that I've been listening, that I never stopped thinking about you, that even when I was gone, I still remembered." Jimin's lips trembled, but his jaw set tightly. "You can't just show up with a gift and expect it to erase months of pain." "I wasn't trying to erase it," Jungkook said. "I was trying to honor it." That made Jimin pause. Outside, a door slammed in the hallway, making both of them flinch. Somewhere, a stylist was shouting for someone to bring the backup outfits. Time hadn't stopped just because their world had cracked open. But for them, in this moment, it might as well have. Jimin ran a hand through his hair, pacing now, his fingers twitching. "You think I didn't try to move on? You think I didn't try to hate you?" Jungkook's voice was quiet. "Did it work?" Jimin stopped walking. "No." The single syllable sat between them like a confession. "I tried too," Jungkook admitted. "Tried pretending you were just another bandmate. Tried forcing myself to not notice when you skipped breakfast because you were upset, or when you rubbed that old scar on your hand when you were stressed. Tried not to watch your vlogs at 2 a.m. just to hear your voice." Jimin looked away, wiping his face with the back of his hand, but his eyes were still dry. The tears weren't coming. Maybe they had run dry weeks ago, maybe even months. All that remained now was the fatigue of carrying them too long. "So why now?" Jimin asked again, softer this time. "Why bring that memory back today?" Jungkook hesitated, then reached into his coat pocket. Slowly, deliberately, he pulled out an envelope. Worn edges, faded print. Jimin blinked, confused, as Jungkook held it out with trembling fingers. "This came in the mail 2 days ago," Jungkook said. "I never told you. But when we were still in Tokyo last year, I applied for a storage recovery service to try to find any trace of your grandmother's belongings after the fire. I knew you said everything was gone, but I thought maybe... Jimin took the envelope slowly, cautiously. His fingers brushed Jungkook's, and both flinched, like it burned. Inside the envelope, there was a photo, an old one, color faded, but clear enough to see a younger version of Jimin, barely 5, sitting on a porch beside an elderly woman. Between them sat the original porcelain box, whole, radiant in the sunlight. Jimin's breath hitched. I had this restored from the negatives they recovered, Jungkook said. I wanted you to have something. Anything. The photo trembled in Jimin's hands. I was going to give it to you tonight, Jungkook continued. But when I saw you alone in the waiting room, I panicked. I thought the box would mean more. I didn't know how to give you this without ruining everything. You already ruined everything, Jimin whispered, voice broken. But this? He stared at the photo like it was a ghost come to life. I'm tired, Jungkook, Jimin said finally. I'm tired of pretending that this doesn't hurt, that I've moved on, that I don't care. You don't have to pretend anymore. Jimin looked up slowly. And what? You think we go back to the way things were? Start over? No, Jungkook said. I think we try something different. Not going back, not pretending, just being real. Finally, Jimin's lip trembled. I can't promise I won't hurt again, Jungkook added, his voice barely audible. But I can promise I won't run from it anymore. For the first time in what felt like forever, Jimin let his shoulders drop. His walls didn't crumble, they lowered, just enough to see through. He nodded once, not in forgiveness, but in understanding. The door opened, and the staff re-entered, sensing the shift in energy but unsure of what to say. Taehyung gave Jungkook a questioning glance, but Jungkook only gave the smallest shake of his head. Not yet. Not the time. Jimin placed the photo back into the envelope gently and held it against his chest. I'll see you on stage, he said. Jungkook smiled, tired, raw, but genuine. Yeah, he replied. I'll be there. And then Jimin was gone, leaving only the lingering warmth of hope that maybe, just maybe, something broken could still carry meaning. The air backstage felt different now, colder, heavier. As if the walls themselves had overheard what had happened in the waiting room. As if the entire building was now holding its breath, waiting for the next crack in the floor. Jungkook stood behind the curtain, alone. The photo of Jimin and his grandmother was now safely back in its envelope, resting in the inner pocket of Jungkook's jacket. His fingers kept brushing against it, seeking some kind of reassurance that what happened earlier hadn't been a dream or a nightmare. The memory of Jimin's voice still rang in his ears. I'll see you on stage. But it didn't sound like closure. It sounded like a truce with a grenade still ticking between them. From the corner of his eye, Jungkook saw Jimin enter the hallway, flanked by a couple of stylists who didn't dare say a word. Jimin's eyes were hidden behind sunglasses, his lips pursed in a line that dared anyone to try reading him. His outfit was pristine, an oversized black coat draped elegantly over a simple shirt, the silver chain at his collarbone glinting with cold precision. He looked every bit the global star, but Jungkook saw at the barely visible crease between his brows, the twitch in his jaw, the way his left thumb kept rubbing the side of his index finger. Nervous, still cracked, still human beneath all that performance. Jungkook stepped out into the corridor. No one said anything. The staff peeled away instinctively, leaving a clear path between them. The silence was electric again. Jimin, Jungkook said carefully. Jimin stopped, turned his head slightly, but didn't remove the sunglasses. We need to talk, Jungkook said. Jimin's voice was flat. You said everything earlier. So did I. Not everything. Jimin sighed, finally removing the sunglasses and looking at him directly. His eyes were bloodshot. No makeup could hide that. Then say it, he said. Say what you've been holding back. Jungkook took a breath. You told me you didn't want to pretend anymore. So don't pretend you're okay being apart. Jimin flinched. I didn't say I was okay, but you're acting like it. Jungkook shot back, voice rising. You walk past me in rehearsals like we're strangers. You speak only when necessary. You perform like we were never more than co-workers. Because I had to, Jimin snapped. Because if I didn't, I would have broken down in front of thousands of people. Do you know what it's like to cry in the middle of a performance and not be able to hide it? Do you know how many fan cams caught me that night after Osaka? They thought it was exhaustion. It wasn't. I looked at you, and I couldn't breathe. Jungkook's chest tightened. You could have told me. I tried, Jimin shouted. But every time I reached out, you pulled back. Every time I needed you to just sit with me in silence, you disappeared. Jungkook stepped closer. I was grieving too. Jimin's expression twisted into something ugly, something raw. Don't you dare compare your silence to my grief, he said, voice cold now. You had choices. You chose not to answer my messages. You chose not to knock on my door. You chose to walk past me for months. Jungkook felt the heat rising in his throat. You think it was easy for me? Watching you act like nothing happened? Posting smiling selfies with Taehyung like the world hadn't collapsed? You're jealous of Taehyung now? Jimin laughed, but it was bitter. You were the one who told me to find support elsewhere. You said I deserved better. I didn't mean it, Jungkook whispered. Well, you said it, Jimin fired back. And I believed you. The hallway was too quiet, too exposed. They didn't care. They didn't care if the walls had ears, if cameras were lurking, if the staff was already whispering. Jungkook's voice broke. I thought I was protecting you. You weren't, Jimin said. You were protecting yourself. The words landed hard. Jungkook didn't deny it. Because it was true. He had been scared of how deep he had fallen. Scared of needing someone as fiercely as he needed Jimin. And instead of facing it, he had buried it. And Jimin had been left to bleed alone. I hated you, Jimin admitted, voice cracking. I hated how you made me believe I was special, only to make me feel invisible. I hated waking up to silence. I hated watching interviews where you smiled like you weren't dying inside. I hated that I still wanted you, even when I couldn't stand the sight of you. Jungkook was trembling now. I never stopped loving you. The words spilled out before he could catch them, and they echoed loud, unforgiving. Jimin froze. A stylist gasped quietly from behind a curtain. Someone else hurriedly walked away, pretending not to hear. But the damage was done. Jimin's eyes welled up again, but still, he didn't cry. His voice, however, dropped to a whisper. Then why did you leave me alone in that hospital waiting room? Jungkook's world collapsed. The memory hit him like a truck the night Jimin's mother collapsed unexpectedly. Jungkook had been the one who drove him to the hospital. But after hearing the initial prognosis, he had panicked. Something in him snapped, and instead of staying, he left. He told himself he'd come back later. He never did. I froze, Jungkook said, ashamed. I thought I'd make it worse. I told myself you'd be better off if I left. Jimin took a shaky breath. I waited for 8 hours. Every time the door opened, I thought it would be you. But it never was. I'm sorry. Sorry doesn't fix abandonment. I know. I cried into a vending machine sandwich because you weren't there, Jimin said, voice barely holding together. That's what I remember when I think of love now. Jungkook's knees nearly gave out. I hate that I still want to forgive you, Jimin whispered. I hate that I'm still hoping you'll somehow make it make sense. Jungkook reached for him. Let me try. Jimin didn't step away, but he didn't move closer either. I don't trust you, he said, and I don't trust myself around you. I'll earn it back, Jungkook promised. You might never. I'll still try. Jimin's lips trembled. If you mess this up again, there won't be another chance. I won't. A door opened behind them. Bang Si-hyuk entered with 3 managers in tow. The timing couldn't have been worse. He stopped dead in his tracks, eyebrows furrowing as he noticed their proximity, the tense atmosphere, and the flushed look on both their faces. Is everything all right? Bang asked, his tone neutral but loaded. Jimin was the first to answer. It will be. Bang studied them for a second longer, clearly unconvinced. But he said nothing more, only gestured toward the stage direction. 5 minutes. As he walked away, Jungkook exhaled shakily. Do you still want me to go on stage with you? He asked. Jimin looked at him long and hard, his eyes searching for something, maybe conviction, maybe the ghost of a promise that hadn't died yet. Yes, Jimin said, but not as someone I used to know. I want the real you beside me. Jungkook nodded, and for the first time in a long time, there was no smile, just truth. They turned toward the stage, side by side, and the curtain began to rise. It started with a single post, a blurry, grainy clip no more than 27 seconds long. posted to a throwaway account, timestamped the exact hour of the argument backstage. A shaky hand had filmed through the half-closed divider between corridors Jungkook and Jimin, locked in a volatile exchange. No audio, no context. Just the raw, explosive body language. Jimin jabbing his finger at Jungkook's chest, Jungkook grabbing his arm, Jimin wrenching it away. Faces close, too close. Then the moment Jungkook's lips moved, mouthing something desperate. And Jimin's stunned silence. By the time they had finished their performance that night, the internet had already exploded. Jungkook fight was trending #1 globally within an hour. The fanbase split like tectonic plates. Theories swarmed like hornets. Jimin finally confronted him about the hospital night. Jungkook confessed again. Look at his mouth, he said, "I love you." This is why Jimin's been so distant lately. It all makes sense now. Staff betrayal, who leaked it? This is heartbreaking. Someone's getting fired for this. They walked off the stage to a silence that felt heavier than applause. Jungkook's chest was still heaving from the final chorus. Sweat trickled down his neck, but the cold dread in his stomach had nothing to do with physical exhaustion. Taehyung met them backstage with a tight jaw and a phone clenched in his hand. "You need to see this," he said grimly. He didn't show the video, just the fallout. Screenshots of tweets, translated posts from international fan sites, photos of Jimin crying during the bridge of the last song, fans zooming into Jungkook's trembling hand when he touched Jimin's shoulder on stage. Every microscopic movement now dissected, recontextualized, twisted. Jimin stared at the screen. Unreadable. "Who filmed this?" he asked quietly. "We don't know yet," Taehyung said. "It wasn't official crew. Someone must have been backstage unauthorized. There were interns helping hair and makeup from the sponsor company," another manager offered. Jungkook felt a flush of nausea crawl up his throat. "Do we know who leaked it to Twitter?" "No," Taehyung said. "But whoever it was, they wanted chaos. It worked." By midnight, several media outlets were already drafting speculative headlines. Rift in BTS, explosive footage between Jimin and Jungkook raises concerns among fans. Is this the end of Jungkook? Body language experts weigh in, and Hybe's golden duo shatters on camera what really happened backstage. The PR team began calling. Hybe's legal division was looped in. Every team member was being questioned. Phones reviewed. Camera footage pulled. And Jimin? Jimin walked silently into the dressing room, shut the door, and didn't come out for hours. Jungkook stood outside that door for 20 minutes, unsure whether to knock, to scream, to cry, or to run. He didn't do any of it. He just stood there. Eventually, Taehyung put a hand on his shoulder. "You can't protect him from this." Jungkook didn't answer. Because he didn't believe it. Because he had to. Later that night, the group was escorted quietly to the van. There was no talking. The silence was cavernous. Jin and Yoongi looked worried. Namjoon kept checking his phone. Hosea kept glancing at Jimin and Jungkook through the rearview mirror. Even Taehyung, who usually filled silences with laughter or commentary, said nothing. He just stared out the window with a clenched jaw. Back at the dorms, Jimin didn't go into his room. He walked straight into Jungkook's instead. The door shut with a soft but firm click. Jungkook sat at the edge of the bed, still wearing the jacket from the show. Jimin stood in front of him, arms crossed, the glow from the hallway casting his features in gold and shadow. "You let them watch us burn," he said. Jungkook looked up. "I didn't know we were being filmed." Jimin laughed, dry and bitter. "That's not what I meant." Jungkook blinked. "Then what?" "You stood there," Jimin interrupted, "and you poured everything out in front of people. You knew that hallway wasn't secure. You knew people were around, but you needed that moment to be seen, didn't you?" Jungkook stood. "No, I needed you to hear me. I didn't give a damn who else was watching." "Well, now the whole world is," Jimin snapped. "Congratulations. You think I did this for attention?" Jungkook's voice cracked. "You think I planned this?" "I think," Jimin said coldly, "you didn't care who got hurt as long as you got your confession." Jungkook took a step back, like he'd been slapped. "That's not fair. Neither was being ambushed on stage by millions of eyes analyzing every blink," Jimin whispered. "You said you wanted to fix things. You didn't fix anything. You set the house on fire. I didn't leak the footage, but you gave them the show. Silence again. Jungkook's fists clenched. So what do you want me to do? Public apology? Private exile? Do you want me to leave the group? Jimin's lips parted slightly. I'll do it, Jungkook said, voice hoarse. If that's what it takes to make you feel safe again? Jimin shook his head slowly. I don't want you to leave. I want you to stop offering yourself up like some martyr every time things go wrong. I want you to stop trying to bleed for me instead of standing beside me. Jungkook stepped forward. Then let me stand beside you. I don't know if I can trust you not to run, Jimin said, eyes glassy now. Not to say too much or too little. Not to vanish when the next storm hits. I won't vanish, Jungkook said. Not this time. The tension in the room pulsed. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't reconciliation. It was war truce in the middle of a battlefield, still littered with landmines. The door creaked open. It was Taehyung. He looked between them. His expression was unreadable. We need to talk, he said. Now, all three of us. They didn't argue. In the common room, the TV was on mute, but the screen displayed a paused YouTube video. It was the leaked clip, again already re-uploaded by dozens of gossip channels. Taehyung picked up the remote and clicked play. This time, the audio had been enhanced. Some faceless leaker had boosted the sound. You could hear Jungkook's voice shaking, just audible enough to make out the words, I never stopped loving you. Then the moment Jimin didn't reply, then silence. Then it looped. Taehyung muted it again. He turned around. Do you understand what this is? He said quietly. Jimin didn't respond. Jungkook shook his head. This is ammunition, Taehyung said. For the people who want to split us. For the fans who want to pit us against each other. For the reporters who don't care about your pain, only your drama. Jimin's throat bobbed. They don't want truth, Taehyung said. They want spectacle, and we gave it to them, Jungkook muttered. No, Taehyung said. They took it, but we can decide what happens next. Jimin finally spoke. And what do you suggest? Taehyung walked to the middle of the room. We go live. Both Jungkook and Jimin stared. You're insane, Jimin said. Maybe, Taehyung replied. But if we're going to be seen, let's control what they see. You don't need to explain everything. Just show that you're human, that you're not broken beyond repair. Show them the truth, not the scandal. Jungkook looked at Jimin. For a moment, it was like the world had shrunk down to just the two of them. Jimin closed his eyes. Then, after a long beat, he nodded. 1 hour later, the three of them went live, and the world watched again. But this time, they chose what the world saw. When the live broadcast ended, the silence that followed was more terrifying than any noise. The screen went dark. No outro, no music. Just the sudden emptiness of a world that had just witnessed vulnerability turned into digital permanence. Jimin sat back on the couch slowly, his expression unreadable. He hadn't said much during the live stream, just a few words, carefully chosen. Enough to show unity, enough to extinguish the worst of the fire. But nothing too revealing, nothing too raw. We just wanted to clear the air, Taehyung had said. We're fine, and thank you for your concern. We're real people, Jungkook added. We have real emotions, but we're still here, together. Jimin had simply said, we're healing. That's all we want to share tonight. The comments had been a tsunami, thousands every second. Hearts, cries, accusations, support, disbelief. Some fans begged for clarity. Others demanded privacy. And then there were those who thrived in chaos, twisting even their silence into another form of scandal. Now, with the phone turned face down on the table, the only thing left was the tremor in the air. Taehyung leaned against the wall, arms folded, his gaze heavy on the floor. Jimin stood and walked to the window. The skyline of Seoul blinked back at him with indifferent lights. Jungkook sat motionless, hands laced together, staring into nothing. None of them spoke. Not yet. Then the door opened. It was Bang Si-hyuk. The look on his face said everything. Close the door, he said, and everyone obeyed. He sat down without invitation, a single folder in his hand. Plain, unmarked. You're lucky, he said slowly. Very lucky. That broadcast stopped what could have been an avalanche. Jungkook opened his mouth, but Bang lifted a finger. But it also opened another door, Bang continued. The board wants answers, and someone inside our own building leaked the footage. The temperature in the room dropped. Jimin turned from the window. Inside? Yes, Bang said. We traced the original upload. It came from a device that connected to our network 5 hours before the video went public. A Wi-Fi login registered under a guest badge. It was narrowed down to 8 possible people. He dropped the folder on the table. 6 interns, 1 makeup assistant, and he looked directly at Jungkook. One of your personal staff. The silence was deafening. Who? Jungkook asked. Voice hoarse. Bang tapped the folder. Read it. Jungkook's hands were unsteady as he reached for it. He flipped the first page, and then he stopped breathing. Taehyung, he whispered. A single photograph stared back. A familiar face, bright smile, hair pulled back in a neat bun. His personal assistant for nearly a year. She had been there through rehearsals, shows, breakdowns. The one who brought him energy drinks when he collapsed in Tokyo. The one who held his phone when his hands were shaking before a live show. The one who once told him softly, "Don't let the world crush your softness, Jungkook. That's what makes you better." It was her. She filmed it? Jimin asked, disbelief sharp in his tone. She connected to the network using a mirrored device, Bang said. The footage came from her phone. She disguised it through a burner account, rerouted it through a VPN, but she made a mistake. She left her Bluetooth name unchanged. We cross-checked the logs. Why? Jungkook said, staring at the photo like it was a stranger's face. Why would she? We asked her the same thing, Bang said. She's in the security office now, and she asked to speak to you. Alone. Jimin took a step forward. That's not safe. She's not dangerous, Bang replied. Just foolish and emotional. Jungkook didn't say anything. He stood slowly, folding the folder shut, and walked toward the door without a word. The hallway to the security office was long, cold, and brightly lit. Each step echoed like a countdown. He found her sitting in the small interview room. She looked up when he entered, eyes red but dry. No handcuffs, just guilt. Close the door, she said softly. He did. Dan stood slowly. You probably hate me. He didn't answer, just stared. I didn't plan to leak it, she said quickly. At first, I recorded it because it felt like something important, like history. You two were finally speaking, after all this time, and I thought, God, I thought maybe this could help you. Like people could finally understand you. Like they'd see the pain behind the silence. You thought you were helping? Jungkook's voice was eerily calm. I was wrong, she whispered. I know that now. But the comments, the speculation, they were tearing you apart. I thought maybe if they saw it, really saw it, they'd stop. Jungkook's jaw was tight. You had no right. I know, she said, tears falling now. But I loved you. The words hit like ice. Jungkook blinked. What? Taehyung wiped her eyes. I've loved you since the second week I worked with you. But not in some fantasy way. I loved you in the quiet ways, the real ways. The way I saw you fall apart and hold others together at the same time. The way you smiled for fans after crying in the stairwell. He backed away slightly. You used that love to betray me. I didn't mean to, but you did, he said. You filmed the most vulnerable moment of my life, and you let the world dissect it. I thought Jimin would finally say something back, she said, breaking. I thought maybe if he saw himself the way I saw you, he'd stop hurting you. You don't know him, Jungkook said. And you never really knew me. Taehyung collapsed back into the chair, weeping openly now. I'm sorry. Jungkook turned to the door. I'll never forgive you, he said quietly. But I hope someday you forgive yourself. He didn't look back. When he returned to the dorms, he didn't speak to anyone. He walked into the practice room, locked the door, turned off the lights, and dropped to the floor. His chest hurt in a way that was beyond words. His throat closed. And finally, he let himself sob. Later that night, Jimin found him there. He didn't speak. He just sat beside him on the floor. No questions, no judgment. And then Jimin reached over, gently lacing their fingers together. Let's write the truth ourselves next time, he said softly. Jungkook nodded, and for the first time in days, he breathed. The meeting room was colder than usual. The kind of cold that seeps beneath the skin, not from temperature, but from tension. The walls were lined with acoustic panels, The lights above were sterile, casting hard shadows. A long table stretched across the center. At one end sat Jungkook and Jimin. At the other, 4 Hybe executives, 2 PR heads, and 1 woman from legal who hadn't stopped writing since she walked in. Between them lay a thick envelope. Inside it, the script, not a metaphorical one. A literal 14-page document that outlined what Jungkook and Jimin were to say in their upcoming televised interview, word for word. Every laugh, every hesitation, every authentic moment of emotion had been meticulously crafted, reviewed, revised, and approved. Jimin hadn't touched it. Jungkook had read it once and slid it back across the table. "No," he said. The head of PR blinked. "Excuse me? We're not reading this," Jungkook repeated, firmer. Jimin leaned forward slightly, voice low and controlled. "You're asking us to lie." "It's not a lie," one executive said, her tone clipped. "It's narrative shaping. It's manipulation." Jimin snapped. "Public sentiment is shifting," said another. "We've protected you so far, but it's a fragile balance. This interview will be watched by millions. If we don't control the message, someone else will." "Then let them," Jungkook replied. "Let them see who we really are." The room fell silent. "Do you understand what you're risking?" the legal rep finally asked. "Sponsors, partnerships, international contracts. This affects more than just you." "We're not children," Jimin said coldly. "Stop treating us like products." "We built you," one executive snapped. "We made sure your mistakes were erased before they reached the press. We buried the hospital story. We buried the Tokyo incident. We protected you." "You didn't protect us," Jungkook interrupted. "You protected your investment." The words echoed louder than anyone expected. The head of PR's voice softened. "Jungkook, Jimin, this is just one interview. Say the right things and everything smooths over. The fans forget. The board relaxes. The media moves on. You go back to being adored." "I'd rather be hated for the truth," Jungkook said, "than loved for a lie." Jimin stood. "We're done here. You walk out now," the exec warned. "You're breaching your contract." Jungkook stood too. "Then tear it up." The door slammed behind them. They didn't speak until they were outside the building, standing in the cold air of early morning. The sky was still dark. Seoul was still half asleep. But inside both of them, something had fully awakened. "What now?" Jimin asked. Jungkook exhaled. "We speak our way." They didn't go home. They went to a studio. An old one, unused, rented privately years ago by one of their past producers. No staff, no handlers, just a single camera, a mic, and each other. They sat across from each other. "Are you sure?" Jimin asked. "More than I've ever been." They hit record. No lights, no edits, no management hovering behind the lens. They just spoke. Jungkook went first. "I didn't fall in love with the image. I fell in love with Jimin, the real one. The complicated, stubborn, beautiful, chaotic Jimin who once screamed at me in a hallway because I was late for dance practice, and who held me 3 hours later when I cried after a call with my father." Jimin didn't flinch. He stared directly at him. "I loved him then," Jungkook said. "And I still do." Jimin's voice cracked when he replied. "You were my home," he whispered. "And then one day, I came home and you weren't there. You left me with silence, and I hated you for it. I hated you because losing you felt like losing a part of myself I couldn't grow back." Jungkook's hand reached across the table. Jimin took it. "You want the truth?" Jungkook said, looking at the camera now. "We're not perfect. We argue. We fall apart. But we come back. And we're done hiding." They posted the video directly to their shared fan platform. No filter, no warning, no press release. Within an hour, it had 4 million views. Within 3, the hashtags were everywhere. Jimin and Jungkook tell all. We support truth. Hybe speak up. Fans cried. Fans fought. Some were furious. Some said they'd waited years for this kind of honesty. Others accused them of selfishness, of breaking the illusion. But beneath all the chaos, something powerful was happening. The masks were falling. Inside Hybe, the response was nuclear. Emails flew. Emergency meetings were called. Investors demanded explanations. Bang Si-hyuk called them directly. "What you've done," he said slowly, "has changed everything." "We know," Jimin replied. There was a long pause. "Good," Bang said. Neither of them expected that. You've made your choice, he continued. And now we make ours. The next morning, a statement was released. HYBE confirmed that the leaked video had not been authorized. They admitted internal failure in managing security. They also confirmed disciplinary action had been taken. But what shocked everyone most was the final paragraph. We support the right of our artists to speak truthfully about their experiences. BTS has always been about authenticity, and we remain committed to that principle. The internet imploded. And that night, when Jimin and Jungkook returned to the dorms, there was a letter waiting on the table. No envelope. Just a single sheet, handwritten. From Taehyung. I leaked it, it said. Not Taehyung. She covered for me. I wanted the truth to come out. I never meant to hurt you. I just couldn't watch you suffer in silence anymore. The paper trembled in Jimin's hands. Jungkook sank into the couch, silent. He was with us since the beginning, Jimin whispered. Why would he? Because he loved us, Jungkook said. Just not the way we expected. The betrayal hit like a second wave, but this time, it didn't break them. It forged them. And for the first time in a long, long time, they felt free. The first time Jungkook saw the headline, he thought it was clickbait. International reporter claims to hold documents about Jimin's secret past. HYBE refuses to comment. The image attached to the post was blurred, but familiar. An old photo of Jimin, cropped tightly around the eyes, pulled from a time before fame, before stylists, before walls. Jungkook's thumb hovered over the screen, blood draining from his face as he scrolled further. There were no specifics, no names, just threat and implication. A single sentence burned into every article, every tweet, every whispered post. I will go live on Friday night. The truth deserves to be heard. The journalist behind it had a reputation. Ruthless, feared, known for taking down CEOs, politicians, influencers, anyone who dared to guard their ghosts too closely. And now, her sights were set on Jimin. When Jungkook arrived at the dorm, Jimin was already sitting at the dining table, unmoving. The room dimmed around him as if light itself didn't know how to enter that space anymore. You saw it, Jimin said without looking up. Jungkook's chest tightened. It's garbage. She doesn't know you. She knows enough. Jungkook crossed the room quickly. What is she talking about? Jimin finally met his eyes. The look wasn't fear. It was resignation. I don't know how she found it, he said quietly. But she's not lying. Jungkook's stomach twisted. What is she going to reveal? Silence. Jimin stood slowly and walked to his room. When he returned, he was holding a thin manila folder. He handed it to Jungkook with trembling fingers. This is everything she could find if she really has it. Jungkook opened the folder. The first page was a photo. A hospital chart. Name. Park. G. Min. Age. 17. Diagnosis. Severe depressive episode. Prescribed observation following overdose attempt. He stared at the paper. It felt like the air had been knocked from his lungs. The second page was a handwritten letter one Jungkook recognized from a lyric notebook Jimin had once told him he lost. But it wasn't a song. It was a suicide note. Don't read it aloud, Jimin whispered, his voice breaking. Jungkook didn't. He couldn't. He looked up. You tried to? Jimin's head dropped. Once. When I was 17, my father had just told me I wasn't his son anymore, that I was a mistake. Jungkook couldn't breathe. I spent a week in the hospital, Jimin continued. Nobody visited, not even my mother. Only the social worker showed up. She gave me that paper and said if I ever needed to write again, I should write truth. Jungkook sank into the nearest chair. The folder in his lap felt radioactive. And now, Jimin said, laughing bitterly, the world gets to see it. No, Jungkook said. Jimin's eyes snapped up. No, Jungkook repeated. We're not letting her do this. You don't owe your trauma to anyone. You don't owe them your scars. She'll spin it, Jimin said. She'll say I've been hiding a mental health issue, that I'm unstable, that HYBE covered it up, that our relationship was built on manipulation. Jungkook stood abruptly, pacing. We can sue. She'll hide behind journalism. Then we expose her, Jungkook said. We show what she's done to other people. We show how she twists lives. Jimin stepped forward. You'll make it worse. I don't care. I do, Jimin snapped. You think you're helping, but this isn't yours to fight. Then let me carry some of it, Jungkook shouted. You were never meant to carry this alone. They stood inches apart, the silence charged with pain and unspoken love. Jimin broke first. I can't go through that again, he whispered. The public eye, the headlines, the shame. There's no shame in surviving. Then why do I feel like I'm about to drown? Jungkook reached for his face, cupping it with both hands. His thumbs brushed tears before they could fall. I won't let you drown, he said, even if I have to hold you above water until I disappear beneath it. Jimin's eyes closed. What are we going to do? Jungkook's reply was immediate. I'm going to do the interview. Jimin stepped back. No, absolutely not. She wants pain? Let her have mine instead. You don't even know what she'll ask. She wants to destroy someone? Let it be me. I won't let you destroy yourself to protect me, Jimin growled. You don't get to choose, Jungkook fired back. You protected me when I fell apart on tour. You picked me up when I couldn't stop vomiting from panic. You held me when I thought I would die from the pressure. Jimin turned away. His back heaved with each breath. Let me do this, Jungkook pleaded. You'll regret it, Jimin said. She'll twist your words. Let her try. 2 days passed like ghosts. Jungkook arranged everything quietly. No management, no handlers, just one camera, one chair, and a contract that gave full consent to release the interview publicly. When the day came, Jimin sat in their dorm with the television muted. His heart raced faster with every second. The live stream began with no warning. The journalist sat across from Jungkook. Why are you here? She asked. I heard you wanted the truth, Jungkook said. So I brought it. You know what I plan to reveal. I do. Why not let it happen? Because the story you think you have is missing one thing. Me. The journalist tilted her head. I was there when Jimin broke, Jungkook continued. Not in body, but in memory. He told me everything. His past, his pain, the hospital, the note. And you still stayed? He fell harder. The journalist blinked. You want to paint him as unstable, Jungkook said. But he's the strongest person I know. You want to say he's hiding something. He's not. He survived something most people wouldn't. And instead of applause, you want to shame him. I want to inform the public. No, you want to own their attention. You want clicks. You want controversy. So here I am. If you're going to destroy someone, destroy me. But you'll never break him again. Not while I'm breathing. The journalist didn't ask another question. She ended the stream. The backlash was immediate. Jungkook's fans were furious. Some praised his bravery. Others begged him to leave the industry for his own safety. And Jimin? He arrived at the studio before Jungkook returned. He didn't knock. Just walked in and wrapped his arms around him. I hated you for doing that, he whispered. I know, but I love you more than I hate you. Jungkook's reply was soft. Then we're still winning. They sat across from each other again, but not in a cozy living room, not in the private comfort of a late-night studio. No, this time, it was inside HYBE's executive boardroom. Cold, fluorescent, clinical. Cameras in the corners, polished hardwood table between them like a battlefield, and around them, every major executive from HYBE, their lawyers, their PR managers, and their silence. Jungkook's fingers tapped against the table in a rhythm he couldn't control. Jimin's hands were folded so tightly in his lap, the blood had long since left his knuckles. And at the head of the table, Bang Si-hyuk read from a document, his voice low, calm, and cold. As of this morning, the board has voted to implement a temporary suspension of all group activities for both of you, effective immediately. Jimin didn't look up. Jungkook stopped tapping. This is not a punishment, Bang continued. It's a cooling-off period. Sponsors are pressuring us. Media presence is volatile. International partners are nervous. You need time to recalibrate. Say it plainly, Jungkook said. You're cutting us out until the fire dies down. Bang looked at him for a moment. We're asking you to rest. You're asking us to disappear, Jimin whispered. The PR director leaned forward. You've both been under extreme emotional stress. The company is concerned for your well-being. Jimin looked up slowly. His voice was soft, but it carried across the room like thunder. Where was that concern when she tried to blackmail me with my own trauma? When the video went viral? When Taehyung disappeared overnight without so much as an explanation? Eyes flickered. Back straightened. He didn't disappear, the legal advisor said. He resigned. Convenient, Jungkook muttered. Bang closed the folder. This isn't about blame anymore. It's about consequence. You lit a match in a dry forest and expected it not to burn. And we stood in the fire together, Jungkook said. We didn't run. We didn't lie. We told the truth. And the truth has cost us dearly, the PR lead replied. Viewership is up. Sympathy is split. But loyalty? That's cracking. A silence stretched too long. Then Jimin asked, "What if we refuse?" "You can't," Bang said simply. "Your contracts allow us to implement a suspension if we believe it's in the interest of public stability." "In other words," Jungkook said, "you own us." Bang didn't answer. They left the meeting without another word. The hallways were quieter than usual, either out of respect or fear. Staff bowed slightly, but didn't speak. Interns looked away. The mood was unbreathable. Back in the elevator, Jimin's fingers curled around the silver handrail. Jungkook stared at the floor indicator lights. "I should have stopped you from doing that interview," Jimin muttered. "You didn't," Jungkook said. "You loved me enough to let me fight." Jimin turned toward him slowly. "And now we're suspended. They can't control us forever." The elevator dinged. The doors slid open. But instead of the empty lobby, there was a crowd. Reporters. Flashbulbs ignited like explosions. Questions flew like bullets. "Jimin, is it true you attempted suicide at 17? Jungkook? Do you regret your confession? Did Hybe silence you? Are you being removed from BTS?" Security shoved the crowd back. Managers yelled. But amidst the chaos, a single voice cut through. Clear, deep, and utterly unexpected. "Leave them alone." The crowd paused. Cameras turned. At the front of the mob stood a man in a plain black coat, hands in his pockets, face half shadowed by the lobby lights, the line of his jaw, the dark intensity in his eyes. Jimin froze. Because he knew that voice. "Kang-ho," he whispered. Jungkook looked between them. "Who?" But Jimin was already walking forward. "Get back inside," one of the managers hissed. Jimin ignored him. He walked straight through the chaos, past the reporters, past the bodyguards, straight to the man he hadn't seen in over a decade. "Why are you here?" Jimin asked, voice cracking. Kang-ho didn't speak right away. Then, softly, "Because I saw what they were doing to you, and I couldn't keep watching from the sidelines." "You left me," Jimin said, eyes glassy. "I was 17. I wasn't allowed to stay. You promised you would fight for me, and I'm here now." The press fell silent. Jimin's lips trembled. "Why now?" Kang-ho took something out of his coat pocket. A USB. "This contains every audio message our father ever sent about you to the private investigator. The one who tracked you after you left Busan. The one who took photos. Who followed you to Seoul." Jimin looked like he'd been shot. "He stalked you," Kang-ho said, voice shaking. "He tried to ruin you. He said you weren't worthy of the family name, that you'd taint it, that he should have erased you." Reporters were recording everything. Jungkook stepped closer, protective instinct roaring. "Why are you giving this to us now?" he asked. Kang-ho looked at him. "Because I saw what Jimin became. Despite him. Because I'm ashamed. I didn't stop our father sooner. Because I want to testify." "Testify?" Jimin echoed. "I'm going to the press. I'm going to tell them what he did, what I let him do, and I'm going to clear your name. You don't have to." "I do," Kang-ho said. "Because you're not a mistake. You're the only reason I ever believed we could be more than what he made us." Jimin broke. Tears came fast, silent, but endless. His knees gave out, and Jungkook caught him. The reporters captured everything. But for once, the photos didn't feel like weapons. They felt like history. Later that night, the USB was played in a private meeting room at Hybe. Executives listened in stunned silence as recording after recording played. Threats, curses, misogynistic slurs, orders to gather anything that could be used to destroy Jimin's influence. Bang Si-hyuk stood with folded arms, his expression unreadable. "This changes everything," he said. Jungkook sat beside Jimin, gripping his hand tightly. "Are you going to spin it?" Jimin asked flatly. Bang looked at him. "No," he said. "I'm going to release it." Jungkook blinked. "Wait, really?" "I've made mistakes," Bang said. "I've protected the brand more than I've protected the people. But this isn't a scandal. This is a crime." Jimin's voice trembled. "You're really going to let the world hear what he said about me?" I'm not going to let it happen, Bang replied. I'm going to make sure it happens. And he did. The next day, the USB recordings were leaked with Hybe's consent. A press statement followed, confirming that the contents were real and that legal proceedings were being considered against Jimin's biological father. The public flipped. What was once seen as personal drama had become something far more devastating. Generational abuse, psychological warfare. A young boy erased by his own bloodline, only to rebuild his worth with songs and sweat and silence. Support surged. Old critics apologized. Hashtags changed. And for the first time in weeks, maybe months, Jimin stepped onto his studio rooftop with Jungkook by his side and breathed without flinching. I never thought he'd come back for me, Jimin whispered. He didn't come back for you, Jungkook said, wrapping an arm around his shoulders. He came back because you never stopped surviving. Jimin looked at him. I wouldn't have survived this without you. I didn't save you, Jungkook replied. You let me stand with you. That was everything. Beneath the stars, they stood silent, together. And this time, the world listened. The stage was colder than it looked. Towering above a sea of polished chairs and black suits, the Summit for Global Youth Mental Health boasted one of the most prestigious audiences in the world. Heads of organizations, billionaire sponsors, advocates, CEOs, former heads of state, and somewhere in the front row, nestled between fashion executives and entertainment moguls, sat a dozen K-pop industry figures whose eyes hadn't left Jungkook and Jimin since they arrived. Jungkook adjusted his earpiece. Jimin clenched and unclenched his fists, his pulse racing. They had been invited weeks ago, an unexpected request after their confession interviews and the devastating reveal of Jimin's family history. The world wanted a face for resilience. They wanted redemption. They wanted healing packaged in poise. But the boys weren't here to soothe. They were here to burn down the illusion. Their names were called. They stepped forward. Applause. Flashes. Polite nods. Jungkook leaned into the podium mic first. Thank you for having us. His voice didn't tremble, but Jimin could see the strain in his neck. We're honored to be here today to talk about mental health and the reality of surviving in an industry that doesn't allow it. Silence. Jimin took over. We're here because we didn't break, but we came close. And no one talks about that. No one talks about the night I almost jumped from my dorm balcony. No one talks about the morning Jungkook had a panic attack so violent he couldn't speak for an hour before going live on stage. Somewhere, a cough. A chair shifted. A woman's pen stopped moving mid-scribble. Jimin continued. No one told us we could say no. No one told us it was okay to cry. They told us to smile, to sing, to dance, to keep quiet. So we did, until we couldn't anymore. Jungkook's jaw tightened. They tell idols not to date, not to cry, not to be angry, not to grieve. They tell us to be perfect, even when we're dying inside. And when we try to leave, they remind us how many people depend on our silence. A man in a black suit stood up near the back. He clapped slowly. Jimin recognized him instantly. Kang Min-ho, CEO of one of Korea's top idol management agencies. The man who once told a rookie artist to keep her trauma to herself if she wanted a contract renewal. Well said, Kang said. But let's not forget you boys had choices. Not everyone has a global platform to cry into. There were a few awkward chuckles, a few nervous glances. Jungkook stepped forward. You think I chose to be followed into hospital bathrooms by reporters? You think Jimin chose to have his suicide note dissected like a trending hashtag? You're not the only ones who've suffered, Kang replied coolly. But you're certainly the loudest about it. Gasps. A woman dropped her phone. Jimin's hands curled into fists. You think we're being loud? He asked, voice shaking. We waited 10 years to speak. 10 years of silence, contracts, threats, manipulation, and now you're weaponizing it, Kang interrupted. Congratulations. You've rebranded trauma into fame. A murmur swept the room. Jungkook moved without thinking. He stepped off the platform, walked directly to where Kang stood, and looked him dead in the eye. This isn't fame, he said. This is survival. Kang smirked. No, this is PR. Let's not pretend otherwise. Jungkook's next words weren't loud, but they ripped through the room. Your artist tried to kill herself last year. Kang froze. You paid off the hospital. You silenced the staff. You told her to get back on tour in 2 weeks. A woman near the front gasped. Another man stood up. Chaos hovered just on the edge of ignition. She sent us a letter. Jimin said from the stage, his voice now calm, crystalline. She begged us to speak. She said if we ever had the power to say something, to say it for her. Jungkook turned to the crowd. We're saying it now. The silence was unbearable. Until a young woman stood. An artist under Kang's label. Her hands trembled as she lifted a microphone. It's true, she said. Everything they're saying. And there's more. So much more. Gasps turned to uproar. Security moved in. PR managers rushed forward. But the press was already filming. Cameras were on. And the truth had already erupted like a volcano. Later that night, the clip would go viral in 50 countries. Not your puppets. Idols are human too. We believe them. But in that moment, the room descended into noise. Jimin was pulled from the stage by his manager. Jungkook was cornered by 2 industry officials demanding an apology. And backstage, a terrified girl in tears thanked Jimin for not staying silent. Outside, the summit spiraled. Sponsors pulled back. Others leaned in. A press conference was called for the next day. Rumors of lawsuits, blacklists, contracts terminated. And through it all, Jimin and Jungkook sat in their shared hotel room in silence. Jimin turned to him. Did we just destroy everything? Jungkook stared at the ceiling. I think we just saved someone. The door opened. Taehyung entered, phone in hand. They're calling it the Idol Reckoning. Hybe's board just released a new code of conduct. Other labels are scrambling. He paused. And Minho resigned. Effective immediately. Jimin let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. I'm scared, he admitted. Me too, Jungkook said. But I'm proud of you, Taehyung added. Of both of you. Jimin's voice was barely a whisper. I didn't think we'd make it this far. Jungkook smiled faintly. We're not done yet. Outside, Seoul roared.